Book 12. The Sirens, Scylla and Charybdis, the cattle of the sun. Our ship sailed on, away from ocean's stream, across the great wide sea, and reached Aea, the island home and dancing grounds of dawn. We sailed in, hauled our ship up on the beach, then walked along the shore beside the sea. There, waiting for bright dawn, we fell asleep. As soon as rose-fingered early dawn appeared, I sent my comrades off to Circe's house to fetch the body of the dead Elpenor. Then, after quickly cutting down brushwood, we buried him where the land extended furthest out to sea. Overcome with grief, we shed many tears. After we had burned the dead man's corpse and armour, we piled up a mound, raised a pillar, then planted there above the mound his finely fashioned oar. While we were occupied with all these tasks, Circe was well aware of our return from Hades' home. Dressed in her finery, she quickly came to us. With her she brought servants, carrying bread, plenty of meat and bright red wine. Then the lovely goddess stood in our midst and spoke to us. "You reckless men, you've gone to Hades' home while still alive to meet death twice when other men die once. But come, eat this food and drink this wine. Take all day. As soon as dawn arrives, you'll sail. I'll show you your course and tell you each sign to look for, so you'll not suffer, or, thanks to vicious plans of sea and land, endure great pain." Circe finished speaking, and our proud hearts agreed with what she'd said. So, all that day until the sun went down, we sat there, eating rich supplies of meat and drinking down sweet wine. The sun then set, and darkness came. So we lay down and slept beside stern cables of our ship. But Circe took me by the hand and led me off, some distance from the crew. She made me sit, while she lay there on the ground beside me. I told her every detail of our trip, describing all of it from start to finish. Then Queen Circe spoke to me and said, "All these things have thus come to an end, but you must listen now to what I say. A god himself will be reminding you. First of all, you'll run into the Sirens. They seduce all men who come across them. Whoever unwittingly encounters them and hears the Sirens' call never gets back. His wife and infant children in his home will never stand beside him full of joy. No. Instead, the Sirens' clear-toned song will captivate his heart. They'll be sitting in a meadow, surrounded by a pile, a massive heap, of rotting human bones encased in shriveled skin. Row on past them. Roll some sweet wax in your hand and stuff it in your companions' ears so none of them can listen. But if you're keen to hear them, make your crewmen tie you down in your swift ship. Stand there with hands and feet lashed to the mast. They must attach the rope ends there as well. Then you can hear both Sirens as they sing. You'll enjoy their song. If you start to beg your men, or order them to let you go, make sure they lash you there with still more rope. When your crew has rowed on past the Sirens, I cannot tell you which alternative to follow on your route, for you yourself will have to trust your heart. But I'll tell you the options. One has overhanging rocks, on which dark-eyed Amphitrite's great waves smash with a roar. These cliffs the blessed gods have called the Planctae. No birds pass through there. Not even timid doves who bring ambrosia to Father Zeus. The sheer rock precipice snatches even these away. And then Zeus sends out another to maintain their count. No human ship has ever reached this place and got away. Instead, waves from the sea and deadly blasts of fire carry away a whirling mass of timbers from the boat and human bodies. Only one ocean ship, most famous of them all, has made it through. The Argo, sailing on her way from Aeetes, and waves would soon have smashed that vessel too against the massive rocks, had not Hera sent her through. For Jason was her friend. On the other route there are two cliffs. One has a sharp peak jutting all the way up to wide heaven. Around that mountain a dark cloud sits which never melts away. No blue sky ever shows around the peak, not even in summer or at harvest time. No human being could climb up that rock and stand on top, not even if he had 20 hands and feet. The cliff's too smooth, like polished stone. Halfway up the rock face, there's a shadowy cave. It faces west, towards Erebus. You'll steer your ship at it, illustrious Odysseus. There's no man powerful enough to shoot an arrow from a hollow ship and reach that cavern. In there lives Scylla. She has a dreadful yelp. It's true, her voice sounds like a newborn pup, but she's a vicious monster. Nobody would feel good seeing her, nor would a god who crossed her path. She has a 12 feet, all deformed, 6 enormously long necks with a horrific head on each of them, and 3 rows of teeth packed close together, full of murky death. Her lower body she keeps out of sight in her hollow cave, but sticks her heads outside the fearful hole and fishes there, scouring around the rock for dolphins, swordfish, or some bigger prey. Whatever she can seize of all those beasts, moaning Amphitrite keeps nourishing in numbers past all counting. No sailors can yet boast they and their ship sailed past her without getting hurt. Each of Scylla's heads carries off a man, snatching him away right off the dark, proud ship. Then, Odysseus, you'll see the other cliff. It's not so high. The 2 are close together. You could shoot an arrow from one cliff and hit the other. There's a huge fig tree there, with leaves in bloom. Just below that tree, divine Charybdis sucks black water down. She spews it out 3 times a day, and then 3 times a day she gulps it down, a terrifying sight. May you never meet her when she swallows. Nothing can save you from destruction then, not even Poseidon, shaker of the earth. Make sure your ship stays close to Scylla's rock. Row past there quickly. It's much better to mourn for 6 companions in your ship than have all of them wiped out together. Circe paused. I answered her directly. Goddess, please tell me this and speak the truth. Is there some way I can get safely through past murderous Charybdis and protect me and my crew when Scylla moves to strike? I spoke. The lovely goddess then replied, You reckless man, you think you're dealing here with acts of war or work? Why won't you yield to the immortal gods? She's not human, but a destroyer who will never die, fearful, difficult, and fierce, not someone you can fight. There's no defense against her. The bravest thing to do is run away. If you linger by the cliff to arm yourself, I fear she'll jump out once more, attack you with all her heads, and snatch away 6 men just as before. Row on quickly past her, as hard as you can go. Send out a call to Crateus, her mother, who bore her, to menace human beings. She'll restrain her. Scylla's heads won't lash out at you again. Next you'll reach the island of Thrinacia, where Helios's many cattle graze, his rich flocks too, 7 herds of cattle, and just as many lovely flocks of sheep, with 50 in each group. They bear no young and never die. Their herders are divine, fair-haired nymphs Lampetiae and Phaethusa. Beautiful Neaera gave birth to them from Helios, Hyperion, god of the sun. Once she'd raised them, their royal mother sent them off to live on Thrinacia, an island far away, where they could tend their father's sheep and bent-horned cattle. Now, if you leave these animals unharmed and focus on your journey home, I think you may get back to Ithaca, although you'll bear misfortunes. But if you harm them, then I foresee destruction for your ship and crew. Even if you yourself escape, you'll get back home in great distress and late, after all your comrades have been killed. Circe finished speaking. When dawn came up on her golden throne, the lovely goddess left to go up island. So I returned back to the ship and urged my comrades to get on board and loosen off the stern ropes. They quickly climbed into the ship, sat down in proper order at each rowing bench, and struck the grey sea with their oars. Fair winds began to blow behind our dark, proud ship, filling the sail. Excellent companions sent by fair-haired Circe, fearful goddess who possessed the power of song. We checked out the rigging on our ship, and then sat down. The wind and helmsman kept us on our course. Then, with an aching heart, I addressed my crew. "Friends, it's not right that only one or two should know the prophecies revealed to me by the lovely goddess Circe. And so I'll tell you all. Once we understand them, we may either die or ward off death and fate and then escape. She told me first of all we should guard against the wondrous voices of the sirens in their flowery meadows. She said I alone should listen to them, but you must tie me down with cruel bonds, so I stay where I am and cannot move, standing upright at the mast. You must fix the rope at both its ends onto the mast. If I start ordering you to set me free, you have to tie me down with still more rope." I reviewed these things in every detail, informing my companions. Our strong ship, with a fair wind still driving us ahead, came quickly to the island of the Sirens. Then the wind died down. Everything was calm, without a breeze. Some god had stilled the waves. My comrades stood up, furled the sail, stowed it in the hollow ship, and then sat at their oars, churning the water white with polished blades carved out of pine. With my sharp sword I cut a large round chunk of wax into small bits, then kneaded them in my strong fingers. This pressure and the rays of Helios, Lord Hyperion, made the wax grow warm. When I'd plugged my comrades' ears with wax, they tied me hand and foot onto the ship, so I stood upright hard against the mast. They lashed the rope ends to the mast as well, then sat and struck the grey sea with their oars. But when we were about as far away as a man can shout, moving forward quickly, our swift ship did not get past the sirens once it came in close without being noticed. So they began their clear-toned cry. "Odysseus, you famous man, great glory of Achaeans, come over here. Let your ship pause a while, so you can hear the songs we two will sing. No man has ever rowed in his black ship past this island and not listened to us, sweet-voiced melodies sung from our lips. That brings him joy, and he departs from here a wiser man, for we two understand all the things that went on there in Troy, all Trojan and Achaean suffering, thanks to what the gods then willed, for we know everything that happens on this fertile earth." They paused. The voice that reached me was so fine, my heart longed to listen. I told my crew to set me free, sent them clear signals with my eyebrows, but they fell to the oars and rowed ahead. Then 2 of them got up, Perimedes and Eurylochus, bound me with more rope and lashed me even tighter. Once they'd rowed on well beyond the sirens, my loyal crewmates quickly pulled out wax I'd stuffed in each man's ears and loosed my ropes. But once we'd left the island far behind, I saw giant waves and smoke. Then I heard a crashing roar. The men were terrified. The oars were snatched away out of their hands and banged each other in the swirling sea. Once they were no longer pulling hard on their tapered oars, the boat stopped moving. I went through the ship, cheering up the crew, standing by each man and speaking words of reassurance. "Friends, up to this point we've not been strangers to misfortunes. Surely the bad things now are nothing worse than when the Cyclops with his savage force kept us his prisoners in his hollow cave. But even there, thanks to my excellence, intelligence and planning, we escaped. I think someday we'll be remembering these dangers too. But come now, all of us should follow what I say. Stay by your oars and keep striking them against the surging sea. Zeus may somehow let us escape from here and thus avoid destruction. You, helmsman, I'm talking above all to you, so hold this in your heart, for you control the steering on this hollow ship. Keep us on a course some distance from the smoke and breaking waves. Hug the cliff, in case before you know it our ship veers over to the other side and you throw us all into disaster." I spoke. They quickly followed what I'd said. I didn't speak a word of Scylla. She was a threat for which there was no remedy. In case my comrades, overcome with fear, might stop rowing and huddle together inside the boat. At that point I forgot Circe's hard command when she'd ordered me not to arm myself. After I'd put on my splendid armour, I took 2 long spears and moved up to the foredeck of the ship, where, it seemed to me, I could see Scylla as soon as she appeared up on the rock and brought disaster down on my companions. I couldn't catch a glimpse of her at all. My eyes grew weary as I searched for her all around that misty rock. We sailed on, up the narrow strait, groaning as we moved. On one side lay Scylla, on the other one divine Charybdis terrified us all by swallowing salt water from the sea. When she spewed it out, she seethed and bubbled uncontrollably, just like a cauldron on a massive fire, while high above our heads, spray was falling on top of both the cliffs. When she sucked the salt sea water down, everything in there looked totally confused. A dreadful roar arose around the rocks, and underneath, the dark and sandy ground was visible. Pale fear gripped my crewmen. When we saw Charybdis, we were afraid we'd be destroyed. Then Scylla snatched away 6 of my companions right from the ship, the strongest and the bravest men I had. When I turned to watch the swift ship and crew, already I could see their hands and feet as Scylla carried them high overhead. They cried out and screamed, calling me by name one final time, their hearts in agony. Just as an angler on a jutting rock casts out some bait with his long pole to snare small fish and lets the horn from some field ox sink down in the sea, then, when he snags one, throws it quivering on shore, that's how those men wriggled as they were raised towards the rocks. Then, in the entrance to her cave, Scylla devoured the men, who still kept screaming, stretching out their arms in my direction as they met their painful deaths. Of all things my eyes have witnessed in my journeying on pathways of the sea, the sight of them was the most piteous I've ever seen. Once we'd made it past those rocks and fled, escaping Scylla and dreadful Charybdis, we reached the lovely island of the god, home of those splendid broad-faced cattle and numerous rich flocks belonging to Helios Hyperion, god of the sun. While I was still at sea in my black ship, I heard the lowing cattle being penned and bleating sheep. There fell into my heart the speeches of Tiresias of Thebes, the sightless prophet, Circe's words as well, on Aea. They had both strictly charged that I should at all costs miss this island, the property of Helios, who brings such joy to men. So with a heavy heart, I spoke to my companions. Comrades, though you have endured a lot of trouble, hear what I have to say, so I can speak about the prophecies Tiresias made, and Circe too, on Aea. They both strictly charge me to avoid this island, which Helios owns, who gives men such joy. Here, she said, we face our gravest danger, so row our black ship past this island. I paused. The spirit in my crew was shattered. Then Eurylochus answered me. His words were full of spite. You're a hard man, Odysseus, with more strength than other men. Your limbs are never weary. One would think you were composed entirely of iron, if you refuse to let your shipmates land when they're worn out with work and lack of sleep. Here on this sea-girt island we could make a tasty dinner. You tell us instead to wander on like this through the swift night. But harsh winds which destroy men's ships arise out of the night, and how could we avoid total disaster if we chanced to meet unexpected blasts from stormy south wind, or from blustering west wind, the ones most likely to completely wreck our ship, no matter what the ruling gods may wish? Surely we should let black night persuade us and now prepare a meal, while we stay put alongside our swift ship. When morning comes, we'll go on board, set off on the wide sea. Eurylochus spoke. My other comrades all agreed. So then I understood too well some god was planning trouble. I replied. My words had wings. It seems, Eurylochus, you're forcing me to stand alone. But come, let all of you now swear this solemn oath. If by chance we find a herd of cattle, or a large flock of sheep, not one of you will be so overcome with foolishness that you'll kill a cow or sheep. No, instead you'll be content to eat the food supplies which goddess Circe gave. Once I'd said this, they swore, as I had asked, they'd never kill those animals. When they had made the oath and finished promising, we moved our ship inside a hollow harbour, by a spring whose water tasted sweet. Then my crewmen disembarked and made a skilful dinner. When everyone had eaten food and drunk to his heart's ease, they wept as they recalled those dear companions Scylla snatched away out of the hollow ship and then devoured. As they cried there, sweet sleep came over them. But when 3/4 of the night had passed, and the stars had shifted their positions, cloud-gatherer Zeus stirred up a nasty wind and an amazing storm which hid in clouds both land and sea alike. And from heaven the night rushed down. Once rose-fingered dawn arrived, we dragged up our ship and made it secure inside a hollow cave, a place nymphs used as a fine dancing and assembly ground. Then I called a meeting of the men and said, "My friends, in our ship we have meat and drink. So let's not touch those cattle, just in case that causes trouble for us. For these cows and lovely sheep belong to Helios, a fearful god who spies out all there is and listens in on everything as well." These words of mine won over their proud hearts, but then, for 1 whole month, south wind kept blowing. It never stopped. No other wind sprang up, except those times when east or south wind blew. As long as the men had red wine and bread, they didn't touch the cattle. They were keen to stay alive, but once what we had stored inside our ship was gone, they had to roam, scouring around for game and fish and birds, whatever came to hand. They used bent hooks to fish, while hunger gnawed their stomachs. At that point, I went inland, up island, to pray to the gods, hoping one of them would show me a way home. Once I'd moved across the island, far from my comrades, I washed my hands in a protected spot, a shelter from the wind, and said my prayers to all the gods who hold Mount Olympus. Then they poured sweet sleep across my eyelids. Meanwhile, Eurylochus began to give disastrous advice to my companions. "Shipmates, although you're suffering distress, hear me out. For wretched human beings, all forms of death are hateful. But to die from lack of food, to meet one's fate that way, is worst of all. So come, let's drive away the best of Helios's cattle, and then we'll sacrifice to the immortal gods who hold wide heaven, and if we get home, make it to Ithaca, our native land. For Helios, Hyperion, will build a splendid temple, and inside we'll put many wealthy offerings. If he's enraged about his straight-horned cattle and desires to wreck our ship and other gods agree, I'd rather lose my life once and for all choking on a wave than starving to death on an abandoned island." Eurylochus spoke. My other comrades agreed with what he'd said. They quickly rounded up the finest beasts from Helios's herd, which was close by, sleek, broad-faced animals with curving horns, grazing near the dark, proud ship. My comrades stood around them, praying to the gods. They broke off tender leaves from a high oak, for there was no white barley on the ship. After their prayers, they cut the creatures' throats, flayed them, and cut out portions of the thighs. These they covered in a double layer of fat and laid raw meat on top. They had no wine to pour down on the flaming sacrifice, so they used some water for libations and roasted all the entrails in the fire. Once the thigh parts were completely roasted, and they'd had a taste of inner organs, they sliced up the rest and skewered it on spits. That was the moment sweet sleep left my eyes. I went down to our swift ship by the shore. As I drew closer to our curving ship, the sweet smell of hot fat floated round me. I groaned and cried out to immortal gods, "Father Zeus, and you other sacred gods who live forever, you've forced it on me, that cruel sleep, to bring about my doom, for my companions who remained behind have planned something disastrous." A messenger quickly came to Helios Hyperion, long-robed, Lampeter, bringing him the news we had killed his cattle. Without delay he spoke to the immortals full of rage. "Father Zeus and you other blessed gods who live forever, take your vengeance now on those companions of Odysseus, Laertes' son. who in their arrogance have killed my animals, the very ones I always look upon with such delight whenever I move up to starry heaven and then turn back from there toward the earth. If they don't pay me proper retribution for those beasts, then I'll go down to Hades and shine among the dead." Cloud-gatherer Zeus answered him and said, "Helios, I think you should keep on shining for immortals and for human beings on fertile earth. With a dazzling thunderbolt I myself will quickly strike at that swift ship of theirs, and in the middle of the wine-dark sea smash it to tiny pieces." I learned of this from fair Calypso, who said she herself had heard it from Hermes the messenger. I came down to the sea and reached the ship. Then I bitterly attacked my crewmen, each of them in turn standing by the boat. But we couldn't find a single remedy. The cattle were already dead. The gods immediately sent my men bad omens. Hides crept along the ground, while on the spits the meat began to bellow, and a sound like cattle lowing filled the air. For 6 days those comrades I had trusted feasted there, eating the cattle they had rounded up, the finest beasts in Helios's herd. But when Zeus, son of Cronos, brought to us the 7th day, the stormy winds died down. We went aboard at once, put up the mast, hoisted the white sail, and then set off out on the wide sea. Once we'd left that island, no other land appeared, only sky and sea. The son of Cronos sent us a black cloud above our hollow ship, while underneath the sea grew dark. Our boat sailed on its course, but not for long. All at once, west wind whipped up a frantic storm. The blasts of wind snapped off both forestays on the mast, which then fell back, and all our rigging crashed down in the hold. In the stern part of the ship, the falling mast struck the helmsman on his head, caving in his skull, every bone at once. Then he fell like a diver off the ship. His proud spirit left his bones. Then Zeus roared out his thunder, and with a bolt of lightning struck our ship. The blow from Zeus's lightning made our boat shiver from stem to stern, and filled it up with sulphurous smoke. My crew fell overboard, and were carried in the waves like cormorants around our blackened ship, because the god had robbed them of their chance to get back home. But I kept pacing up and down the ship until the breaking seas had loosened off both sides of the keel. Waves were holding up the shattered ship, but then snapped off the mast right at the keel. But the ox-hide backstay had fallen over it, and so with that I lashed them both together, mast and keel. I sat on these, and then was carried off by those destructive winds. But when the storms from west wind ceased, south wind began to blow, and that distressed my spirit. I worried about floating back to grim Charybdis. All night I drifted. When the sun came up, I reached Scylla's cliff and dread Charybdis sucking down salt water from the sea, but I jumped up into the high fig tree and held on there as if I were a bat. But there was nowhere I could plant my feet, nor could I climb the tree. Its roots were spread far down below me, and its branches stretched above me out of reach, immense and long, overshadowing Charybdis. I hung there, staunch in my hope that when she spewed again, she'd throw up keel and mast, and to my joy they finally appeared. Just at the hour a man gets up for dinner from assembly, one who adjudicates the many quarrels young men have, who then seek judgment, that's when those timbers first came into view out from Charybdis. My hands and feet let go, and from up high I fell into the sea beyond those lengthy spars. I sat on them and used my hands to paddle my way through. As for Scylla, the father of gods and men would not let her catch sight of me again, or else I'd not have managed to escape being utterly destroyed. From that place I drifted for 9 days. On the 10th night the gods conducted me to Ogygia, the island where fair-haired Calypso lives, fearful goddess with the power of song. She welcomed and took good care of me. But why should I tell you that story? It was only yesterday in your home I told it to you and your noble wife. And it's an irritating thing, I think, to retell a story once it's clearly told.